Continuing with our American-made red dot series, we have the Romeo 4T. I'm going to unbox it and show you what it comes with. This one was provided by Sig for the purposes of this evaluation. I have a lens cloth and an owner's manual I'll review later. All right, pulling all the accessories out of the box on camera was a bit too tricky because they were packed in there pretty tight. We have the Romeo 4T itself, a spacer to make it a lower 1/3 co-witness, a low mount if you want to mount it directly to something like an AK or an HK that has a lower stock to get it as low to the bore as possible. There's a solid front lens cap should you want to swap out the clear ones, probably for anti-reflective purposes. There's a kill flash that screws into the front of the sight, and there's a tool for removing the screws and adjusting windage and elevation when you have the caps off, and it does come with a CR2032 battery. You can, of course, use a coin or a screwdriver in this slot to remove the battery cap, but I'm going to use the tool that came with the sight because it works well for that purpose. Drop the battery in. Interesting battery cap. It does have 3 spring contacts, so I can't imagine that the battery would lose contact with that very easily. And there is an O-ring seal on it for waterproofing. To turn the sight on, I have to hold down either the plus or the minus power buttons for 1 second. All right, it turns on. That's max brightness. I'm going to dial it down. There are 10 daylight visible settings and 2 night vision settings. To turn it off, hold either of the power buttons down. Turn it back on. Now it has 4 different reticles to cycle through. They're not going to show up well on camera here, so we'll show those in photos. But to cycle through those, we're going to hold down both buttons at the same time. Again. And again. The Romeo 4T does have what they call MOTAC, which is a motion sensor technology. It should automatically shut off after 120 seconds. So I'm going to let that run and test that feature. I was unable to get the 4T to shut off using the MOTAC feature. I asked Sig for feedback on this, and they said that the 4T is more sensitive than the 8T, and that if there's any sort of airflow or vibration in the room you're in, it will likely stay on. I was unable to set up a recording situation where I could verify that the dot did in fact turn off after it was left alone with no outside stimulus. Sig Romeo 4T, it's going to the fish tank with its big brother, the 8T. These are being reviewed separately, but I'm putting them both in the fish tank at the same time for the sake of expediency. So we're going to test the waterproof claims that Sig has advertised for this optic by leaving it in the fish tank for a half hour. All right, half hour's up, time to take the optics out. All right, Romeo 4T still going strong. Clean it off and make sure that nothing's inside of it. All right, Sig Romeo 4T, blew off the outside of it. Have to let it air dry a little bit, but it's clear there's nothing inside the lenses, so it passed the fish tank test. All right, starting with 2 rounds to the center. All right, 2 rounds to the top. Right. Bottom. And left.
All right, so I'm going to do center first. Here we go. Now I'm going to bias it to the right. Now to the bottom. And now the left. I forgot to do the top. Let's do that next. So here's top. Now let's go see what we got.
A clear pass on the parallax test for the Romeo 4T. Now on to some use it matches. Of the 4 reticles in the 4T, I preferred the circle dot as it was the fastest for most applications. On really close targets, I could use the whole outer circle for a very fast sight picture, and then when I needed to for smaller target presentations, use the center dot. Without magnification, the ballistic reticles were a bit too busy, and when I was using the magnifier behind the optic, I didn't ever need to shoot at distances that required BDC to that level. Under magnification, the center dot is crisp and perfectly concentric, though slightly less crisp than the dot of the Romeo 8T that I previously reviewed. Nonetheless, it allows me to go 1-for-1 on all these long-range targets. Shooting from awkward angles leaning out of this chopper body is no problem. I'm able to get behind the optic, and the reticle still appears clear when shooting at those weird angles. The glass is sufficiently clear and the reticle sufficiently bright that shooting into variable lighting conditions like the targets in these shadows here is not an issue. Another off-angle shooting position here through the VTAC barricade. My rifle's rotated 90 degrees, validating our parallax test on the clock. I go 1-for-1 on these 6 targets at 50 yards.
All right, so you're done with your testing with the Sig Romeo 4T.
You know, it has all the same reticle options as the 8T. It's a fraction of the weight, and we can maybe throw that on the screen, but it's much smaller, takes up a much smaller footprint on your rail, and it is solar assisted.
Oh, that's very cool.
So I don't know there's a published battery life on this thing because it's solar assisted, but it's going to last a really long time, just like some of the hollow sun optics that you've reviewed before.
So if there's solar power, it will use it to enhance or increase the battery life.
Right.
Does it have anything to do with the brightness of the reticle?
I don't think so, because all the brightness I've seen is manually adjusted. There may be a setting to go to that, but
Fair enough.
I haven't used it.
Something you wouldn't use anyway, probably.
No. So comparing it to the 8T, it is marginally less crisp than the 8T. That may be because of the length of the emitter in there or something like that, but it's still a really clear dot compared to a lot of the other ones we've tested. And under magnification, it's almost as good as the 8T.
Okay.
Smaller window size means it is marginally slower to acquire from low ready, picking the rifle up, switching shoulders. But the trade-off is that it's lighter weight and smaller. So if this was going to be on a rifle that I carried all the time, I think I'd go with the 4T just because of the weight. For match purposes,
Or night vision.
The 8T is better.
Yeah.
Because it has a bigger window, it's faster to acquire, and the battery life is so insanely long with the CR123, you don't really care about it.
It's essentially permanent.
Right, so it's really just a trade-off of, do you want small and lightweight at the cost of a marginal amount of speed and maybe a little bit of clarity in the reticle, or do you want heavier and faster acquisition, bigger window?
And endless battery life.
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting thing, but what we can say, and what I think what I'm hearing here, from what I experienced with both the SIG sights, both the 8T and the 4T, was that they both were actually exceptional.
Yeah. It's just a matter of which sort of flavor do you want.
But we can heartily recommend both.
Yep. And the 4T will probably go on my What Would Stone Do 2020 rifle when I have it built up.
I can see that. Now, people in the audience are going to ask, are we going to do What Would Stoner Do optic stuff? And we will. And this will definitely be one of the contenders. But I can see why you choose it for the lightweight. So it's really cool for once now, for us twice now, to be able to say we can recommend both the SIG optics. The 8T and the 4T have performed admirably. No parallax issues, and you found it to be excellent on the clock as well.
Yep.
So good job, SIG. Thanks for putting out some good optics. And it's nice to have some American manufactured options on the market. Guys, if you like this stuff, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The actual optic was provided by Sig, but ammunition, cost, all the things that happen to make this video come from supporters like you. If you are, thank you. If you can't, we understand. Just subscribe to one of our multiple distribution points. You can find us all at InRange.tv. Thank you very much.